Hello, it's Scott Manley here. If you're like me and you're a space fan, you've probably spent a lot of time watching the iconic launch footage of the Saturn V. It is a miracle of engineering as this magnificent 3,000-ton structure lights its engines and lifts airborne. But while this is happening, the launch tower is doing an equally amazing set of coordinated actions. These access arms, these umbilical arms, are detaching themselves from the rocket and pulling back and stowing themselves. And I don't think that we've really paid as much attention to the launch tower. I actually built the launch tower in Lego for my Saturn V because I thought that it looked cool, but I've not seen a huge amount of resources about this specific tower. And I just stumbled onto the fact that a video game, Re-Entry, a spaceflight simulator, I think it's called now, it actually has a model of the launch tower which you can walk around and tour, and I believe that it's pretty accurate. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to actually walk around the launch site and get an idea of all the hardware, what it did, where it came from, what it was supposed to be doing during the liftoff, and why it was important? And also just to experience what it would look like to be an engineer working on the pad of the Saturn V just prior to launch. And so, yes, the Re-Entry, a space simulator game, it includes a model of Launch Complex 39. Now, obviously, the majority of the game takes place in the tiny command capsule on that, and possibly the lunar module, and it also has Mercury and Gemini. But I want to sit all the way out here so you can take the whole thing in. And because this is a critical part of the launch system, this is the Theodolite hut. And if you've listened to the countdown on the Saturn V, about 15 seconds before liftoff, you'll hear the phrase, guidance is internal. Now, what that meant was there is a reference system in here, an optical system which would be tracking the inertial platform of the rocket that is used for guidance, and it would be keeping these things in sync so that as the rocket wobbled in the wind and the Earth rotated, that it would have an exact reference system. And they would disconnect that 15 seconds before launch. The reason it would be 15 seconds rather than 0 is that during the last 15 seconds, there's a lot of fluid starts to move, a lot of vibration, and that could jar the thing out of alignment by a fraction of a degree or something, enough to cause some problems. Anyway, I'm running up this. This is the crawler track here, which would, of course, carry this entire launch platform here. This is like the mobile launch platform with its service tower here. And I can tell that this is less than 24 hours to launch because there should actually be a second service tower on this side of the pad here. So the mobile launch crawler would carry this platform in and basically sit it down on these posts that you see here, and that would keep it aligned to exactly where it should be. And then it would go off and come back with a second service tower, which would be attached to these support structures, and it would sit and cover the other side of the rocket, and you can access. There would be platforms to access the entire thing all the way up, and on top of the rocket, like the service module and the lunar module, that would be entirely encapsulated. And that would be, for example, how they added stuff at the last minute. For example, the flag, right? The flag and the For All Mankind plate was added less than 24 hours before launch. So I'm running up under here. This is the flame diverter. And you can just about see where the rocket engines are. No, the model isn't amazingly high fidelity, but hey, it's nice to see where these things are. This is a model, by the way. I believe you can probably buy this online because a lot of people model this stuff. I'm going to run up these steps here. And there's going to be a lot of running up steps, so I hope you guys can keep count of exactly how many steps I'm going up. I'm going to pause here for just a second. So this is the base. This is mostly made of like structural steel, and you'll notice there's actually doors in them. There's a couple of floors in here with a whole bunch of support equipment. Things like power conditioning, pneumatics, and a computer. Now, the Saturn V famously has computers to control. Actually, has multiple computers to get it to the moon. But this launch platform has a whole bunch of complicated stuff that needed to be coordinated in a timely manner. So it actually has a computer inside it as well. Standing from up here, we can actually see part of the launch infrastructure. Over on this side, this is the fuel systems here. So the circular tank, the spherical tank, is the hydrogen. And I believe the more cylindrical tank to the right there, that is the kerosene. There's also tanks out there for like hypergolics, because there's 3 different fuels on this. The flame diverter, by the way, it would normally sit out there and then be rolled in under the rocket, just in time for launch. And we'll take a look at the other side of the pad in a minute, but let's take a look at the hold down clamp. So this is hold down clamp number 2. Hold down clamp number 1 is over there behind that umbilical, but there were 4 of them, 1 on each side of the vehicle, and they would hold the vehicle down. And as soon as it got enough thrust, it would lift the thing up, and this cover, this like quarter circular cover thing, would fold down and protect the clamps that were holding it onto the pad, right? Well, yeah, you can see that they just flipped that texture there rather than, copying it and correcting it. Regardless, we can read it. So anyway, there's 4 of these hold down clamps around the tower, but there's also 3 of these tail service masts. So these are umbilical connectors, and they attach to the bottom of the S1C first stage. Now, these have umbilical plates that connect. In this case, it got the RP1, the kerosene. That is how it is loaded onto the first stage of the rocket. But there's also things like, power and air conditioning, the stuff flow through these pneumatics. And these whole things, they pitch backwards after that is retracted, and that points them upwards, and then there's another cover that folds into place over the top there to protect them from the blast, the fury of the F1 engines. Walking around to the other side, you'll see there's 2 more of these tail service masts. Now this one here, I believe, provides like air conditioning, power, and pneumatics. And this one here, this is the one that fills or it has a liquid oxygen fill and drain valve, but it is not the primary liquid oxygen fill and drain valve, as I understand it. We'll walk over here to get a look at this side of the pad. You can see where they store the liquid oxygen all the way out there in that big spherical thing. This is where, this would be another access route here. This is a folded up in this particular model. And of course, this is where the liquid oxygen is connected to the tower as the pad rolls in. So there's a whole set of manifolds there that have to get plumbed in by people working with some big ass pipes. And down here is a big ass pipe. But this isn't for loading stuff onto the platform. This is for people needing to escape from the platform. That is a slide. So if there was a problem with a rocket that required rapid evacuation, people in this building could escape by jumping into this slide that would go down into an underground bunker called the rubber room. It was supported by shock absorbers, covered in concrete, and it could survive, hundreds of tons of explosive power. By the way, these ponds here, these are burn ponds where fuel would you get collected and burned off to make sure that it didn't start fires elsewhere. Anyway, let's run up. Oh, very important thing, of course, the elevator. This is what the astronauts would, of course, have to use because they are in big, heavy spacesuits. I, on the other hand, well, this model doesn't have the elevators implemented, I don't think, so I'm just going to climb up the stairs and, again, keep track of how many steps. So what we're looking for, again, pad, by the way, covered in all sorts of gear for like electrical boxes and plumbing and stuff. But what we're trying to get to is the service arms. Now there's multiple service arms. We've seen the videos of these arms retracting as the rocket launches. Not all of these arms are pulled away right as the rocket launches. Some of these are like pre-flight arms that are rolled out of the way long before takeoff. So this is the very first one. This is the S1C intertank. So this connects to the intertank section between the kerosene and the liquid oxygen tank on the first stage. And there's a hatch in there. Personnel can get in there to access it and make changes. But also, this carries the primary liquid oxygen connection here. And there's two pipes here. One is a load system and one is a drain system. But this actually gets disconnected, a little while before takeoff. So this is primarily used to fill the rocket, and the other one is used to keep it topping up. But this arm is disconnected just before takeoff. Or, sorry, not just before takeoff, like a good few minutes. But if there is a problem and they need to reconnect it, This is the only one that can be reconnected quickly remotely. It can be reconnected in about 5 minutes. And that might be needed if, for example, you need to put more liquid oxygen into the rocket because you changed the launch time. Now, that wouldn't happen on a lunar launch with its narrow launch window, but it might happen on something like, say, Apollo 9, where they were just going to low Earth orbit to test the lunar module. Okay, let's keep going up. You'll also see a bunch of cameras here. The ones in the circular, these cylindrical mounts, they're like, they are TV cameras, and there's a lot of TV cameras all over the pad so you can figure out what's going on. So yeah, let's take a walk out to this one. This is the S1C forward service arm. And this one is a pre-flight arm again, and it provides like pneumatic, electrical connections, air conditioning interfaces. Yeah, this is pulled away like within the last 20 seconds, and it sort of rolls back kind of gently into its mounting there. You can actually see there's these white shock absorbers, so that as it retracts, it gets connected to those. And then there's a support system that sits underneath that. So again, this is a pre-flight arm that is removed prior to the launch. Again, there's one of those nice TV cameras there in its cylindrical mounting. Another important thing I should point out, by the way, is these water lines here. You see how these have these spray attachments on? This is like to protect the pad and potentially protect people on the pad. You could spray out like a mist of water, and if there was something burning over there, it would stop the radiant heat coming through. It might stop the heat propagating. It would give people on the pad more time to evacuate if that happened. So we got to go up one more level to get to the next arm. Okay, so we get two ones connected on this level. The first one is the Stage 2 Aft Connect, and this provides access to the vehicle. And again, it's required. It's put out there only if it's needed. Again, there's going to be, doors and stuff to get in and verify that things are working here. But it's mostly an access arm for people to get out there. Again, a pre-flight arm. It's not one of those ones that dramatically moves backwards when the launch happens. But this is one of the dynamic ones. These are the launch, the in-flight arms, the intermediate connection. This carries the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen. It was more like the vent line side of things. So yeah, connects in here. You can see that there is like your liquid hydrogen line and liquid oxygen line runs in under here, I believe. You can also see these mountings. These are for the separation rockets, these cylindrical things on the side of the rocket. So this one has to retract quickly, and it's on this stage where we can actually get an idea of the retraction mechanism, because you see that white line there? That is a cable which is attached to a pulley system that will pull this back very quickly, and again, it will bump into those shock absorbers, slow it down. So the arm retracts to the right into that slot, and it does it in about 6.4 seconds. Again, get out the way so that it avoids getting burned by the rocket as it's launching. Okay, running up another stage, another set of steps. You can take a look down here to get another idea of how these lines go in. Again, the liquid hydrogen goes in through the top. The liquid oxygen goes in through the bottom, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But I'm not looking at my notes here. Sometimes I make mistakes, and feel free to call me on them, and then you can win a prize, a free walk to whatever destination of your choice. Yeah, this is another stage to go up here. And there we go. Okay, so now we are up to the Stage 2 forward arm. This is also a rapidly dynamic in-flight arm, and this provides the hydrogen venting system, and it provides like the pneumatics, electrical connectors and everything that are required for the second stage. So yeah, electrical connectors and air conditioning, venting, all the stuff that you need. I want to be careful. If I step too close to this, some of these things don't have colliders and you just basically fall down. So trying to avoid that. It's also, by the way, important to note here, you can see a bunch of mechanics here. These umbilicals, they pull away from the rocket first. There's a whole mechanism to pull these backwards. And then the arm starts its lateral retraction. You want to make sure that stuff is retracted before the arm starts moving, because you could damage the umbilical plates, or even worse, damage the rocket as it is leaving the pad, which could be pretty catastrophic. Okay, now we are onto the S4B stage. So we are in the aft connector for the S4B. This is, what is it here? It basically provides like liquid hydrogen and again, liquid oxygen. And so again, this is one of those in-flight arms that you see it connects right here. And again, you have the liquid oxygen going in at the back, and then liquid hydrogen goes in forwards of that, right? So run backwards. Again, fast retracting arm. This is an in-flight arm. And we have a few more to go. Yeah, let's just run up here. One more set of stairs, and we're at the forward section of the S4B stage. So this, again, in-flight arm, this is connected up until the last minute. We now have a whole lot more room to like stand out and look and admire the scenery from here. There's a lot less gear here because we don't need nearly as much propellant. So yeah, you got an access door here, and the main thing that you've got here is the vent for the liquid hydrogen, or sorry, the gaseous hydrogen that's evaporating. That obviously has to be collected from the front of the tank. But this also has a lot of the primary guidance, like a lot of the important connections to the avionics. So if you remember, the Saturn V is controlled by the launch vehicle digital computer, and that is in this cylindrical section. See where it says access door? That entire ring has all the computer hardware placed around it. It's a very big structure, and there's like multiple computers in there, power conditioning system, all your sensors. And so this is where the rocket is controlled from. Now, obviously, the command module has its own computer on board, but that doesn't fly the rocket, as we saw on Apollo 12 when the command module lost its power due to a lightning strike, whereas this kept flying the rocket and the mission was a success. So anyway, that's the S4B forward, and again, it retracts in about 8 seconds. Okay, so now we're getting up to like service module and the command module. This is where the lunar module would be, obviously, in this small fairing section. But you can only access that with the other service tower that comes up and encapsulates this thing. Run up one more set of stairs. I know, it stairs the video. And yes, this is the access to the command module. And this is another service, or not this command module, this service module here. I like how there's like a door with like a thing, just in case you're not caught on this side. You know, you can push that and escape. That would obviously suck. But this is obviously connected right up until liftoff. I can't walk any closer because there's no collider and I will just fall through onto the arm below, which actually isn't so bad. But yeah, this provides connections to the service module. It provides like hypergolics, vents, cooling, electrical, pneumatic, and it pulls back during the launch process once again. And this is the last of the in-flight arms. The final arm is possibly one of the most important arms because it is needed for loading the crew. So again, all these arms, they all retract in towards the tower, turning to the right. The next one, the crew access arm, is designed differently, and we're going to get up there and take a look at that. Okay. Again, so the crew comes up here. Oh yeah, we also have these supports at the top. And there's one thing that's missing, by the way, is there's a tiny little ball that's supposed to sit on the front of that rocket, that escape tower there, right? So the tip of the rocket has air sensors that measure aerodynamic pressure. And that, that's how aircraft does it. It's called the pitot-static system. And the problem with that is it's very important for flight, but the problem with these tiny holes is bugs see it and they're like, I want to make a nest in there. So you want to make sure this is covered until just before launch so that they don't get blocked by, bugs that are eager to make nests. I mean, there's literally stories of airliners crashing because bugs made nests in these air sensing things. So the ball that would cover this would pull off seconds before launch, and it was called the Q ball because it's sort of spherical, but also because air pressure, dynamic air pressure, is measured at or is defined as Q, right? Hence the term max Q. So that was the Q ball. Yeah, cute little name. Anyway, we don't run over this way to get onto this launch thing. There's no steps to get on here because, again, we have astronauts, and the astronauts will come up the elevator. They'll come out here, and again, you'll notice these, like, this is a workplace, so they have workplace safety. Clean stations or whatever. I wash stations. Worth pointing out this is the gondola, the escape system, the wire escape system. If the astronauts needed to evacuate from the top of the rocket, they could be put on this, and it would slide down over there and get captured, and they would be a fair distance away from the rocket in an emergency. But the astronauts, because they're in spacesuits, they have to walk down ramps. They don't get to walk down stairs. So this is the main way to get to the umbilical arm. And one thing I'll notice, by the way, is you have these fire suppression sprinklers here. If the rocket is burning, you want the astronauts to be able to evacuate, so they would be getting doused in water just to make sure that they weren't in any trouble. Yeah, also got it on this side here, this side, and we're coming right down. This is the crew arm here. And yeah, let's go in all the way to the end into the White Room. Now, there is a door. The door doesn't work. You just clip through it. Yeah, this is the White Room, the last place the astronauts would be before getting on the rocket, where Gunter Wendt would strap them in and give them, pep talk for, go and land for America. Oh, that's a terrible accent. I'm sorry, Gunter. I don't know what happened to Gunter. I don't know where Gunter went. Terrible. Anyway, yeah, this is the White Room, and we have a modern version of this, but this particular one was preserved. I believe you can get it. It's still on display at the Kennedy Space Center. So anyway, this access arm, this pipe, by the way, that is providing air conditioning primarily for the command module. This access arm rotates in the other direction. It gets pulled backwards, like it turns to the left. And it gets pulled back just a little early on so that if they need to reconnect and get the astronauts out, they can do that. But then as the countdown gets much closer, about 4 minutes, it gets rotated all the way back, and it latches, I think, on this side here. So yeah, this rotates all the way around to the other side. I think, I can't see the exact mechanism here. But yeah, that's what happens. This all comes all the way around. It's pretty neat how this entire thing works, but it turns out all the way this way to keep it away from the blast, because that White Room, you really don't want it getting bathed in rocket exhaust. Now, this is the end of the rocket, but it's not the end of the tower. There's important stuff the tower continues to do. First, so this elevator and these stairs continue upwards, so let's go upwards a little further. Again, this would be where you get the cue ball level. I don't know if you've noticed any of the film cameras. I haven't been tracking them, but you can imagine where they would be based upon the various camera angles you've seen. So now we get up to the top, and this is, if you think about it, this is your elevator cab here, right? Because you need to be able to run the elevator. And there's a bunch of hardware in there for doing that. And so that you can obviously get in there to maintain that. And there's a little gantry here that you can step up onto. And be careful not to fall down, but it's a long way up here. Pretty neat to be able to look over the entire section here. By the way, you can tell this is Launch Complex 39A because 39B is in that direction. Right, the A was the first one built, B was the second one, and Launch Complex 39C was never built for the Apollo program, but it was actually built, and then the rocket that was supposed to fly on it never flew, so it's still an asset. Now we get up to the top, and this is the crane. This is a crane, obviously very important if you've got a big tower and you need to move heavy equipment around. It's good to have a crane that's on top, and this whole thing can rotate through 360 degrees, and it can carry, well, you can see here, it says it can carry 25 tons if the cable is interior to that marker, and outside of that, it's only supposed to lift 10 tons. I like the way that it is color-coded, so there's your support system there. Now, again, the colliders on this aren't working correctly, but you can actually just clip through this thing and get an idea of what this looks like. But yeah, you can clip all the way through, get to the other side, and take a look down. This is where we've been. This is quite an odyssey to get to this height. And this is not really an accurate simulation, which means you can actually just step off and be fine. In fact, there's a whole bunch of places here that you can only get by stepping off the side and jumping. That is not something I would recommend for the real thing by any means. So yeah, I thought this was fascinating. I thought there's so much to see on this rocket, on this detailed model that somebody clearly spent a lot of time on, and yet it's been made available into this cool little game, Re-entry, a space simulator. The main part of the game is just flipping switches and flying the rockets, the real spacecraft for real. But this was added as a sort of piece of bonus content, and there's so much to see. It's beautiful, and of course, it now means you can watch the real film of the liftoff of the Saturn V and appreciate some of these mechanics now that you know what it looks like. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.